Now, I said we're going to have cider with breakfast this morning. That's because we're going to take a look at the cider industry, particularly with reference to our region, and discussions happening with the country of origin labelling. Goodness knows we've spoken about this so much on ABC Riverina, the need for truth in labelling, accurate labelling that leaves no element to deception and misleading consumers. Big discussions in Australia. The new system is rolling through at the moment, but one particular industry has been having a look saying, you know what? Doesn't quite work for us, and that's the cider industry. With me this morning from Batlow Cider is Rich Coombes. Morning, Rich. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm very well. How are you?
Now, what's the concern with the way labelling is going and how that affects the cider industry?
Recently, the federal government reviewed the framework for cider country of origin labelling for beverages across the board, and cider was excluded from this review. The government's deemed that it's not important for country of origin labelling to be mandatory on cider products, and we feel that we're at a major disadvantage as a local industry, given we're competing against multinational products that may use cheaper imported products for their production.
So why was it deemed not important enough?
There's no real explanation. However, fruit juice products have been included in that review, and cider being essentially a fermented fruit beverage, technically by definition, cider is the fermentation of fruit. So we find it quite strange that it was omitted from the review process.
Well, let's take a look at who you're competing against. Big companies, what sort of product do they put on the shelves next to your locally grown, locally produced cider?
Well, in the eyes of the consumer, there's not a lot of differentiation because the consumer doesn't know essentially what's in a lot of those products because it doesn't need to be disclosed on the label. But about 60 to 80% of most of the cider on the shelf, particularly the cider produced by the bigger players, is made from typically imported concentrate, and often that's from China. It's mainly from China.
So let's walk through the process a bit here. Let's take one of the big companies. They've imported the apple juice concentrate. How do they then make that into cider? Is it a bit like basically turning it into fizzy alcoholic cordial?
Yeah, it's essentially a lot of the, multinational products that, make their cider in a way of, soft drink technology, in that they will add, water to a concentrated apple juice product. The source of those apples, we probably wouldn't know where those apples come from, certainly not Australia. That concentrate is reconstituted into an apple juice and then fermented, typically at a higher gravity as well, so then it can be further, higher gravity being a higher alcohol product that can then be diluted with water to achieve a more accessible sort of 4 to 5% alcohol product. So the use of concentrates is rampant in those sorts of products, which obviously the cost of production is going to be materially lower than local products like us. And
how does that compare to what your process is?
Well, we, like many other local producers, we source and grow the fruit locally, so all of our fruit is picked in Batlow. We crush every single apple in Batlow, and that's all we use. So our process is pretty simple. It's more akin to traditional cider making processes. We have control of the fruit grain process, the crushing process, and also the fermentation process. So we'll crush the fruit, not add any water, any additives, anything except the juice of the crushed fruit. So we keep it super simple, and we believe that's the way cider should be made.
Now, what can the cider industry in Australia do? If we know the discussion's been and gone, the new labelling is coming in, you were unimpressed with how this whole process happened in the first place, then the government comes back to you and says that consumers don't believe that it was that important, therefore as a government we don't believe it was that important. Is it a bit late to do anything?
It's not too late. The association representing the cider industry, Cider Show, has been very active. A couple of months back, they arranged a petition to be signed by Australians to back support for country of origin labelling in cider. That had a fantastic response, and that lobbying process will continue.
Now, why do you think, Rich, that according to the government's market research, and we should point this out, this is the government's market research, it came back saying that consumers didn't think country of origin labelling was of value in things like soft drinks and alcohol, that really essentially if they want to crack a beverage that they really don't care where it comes from. Why do you think that is?
We don't really understand, to be honest. The fact that fruit juice products have been included in that and cider hasn't is bizarre, and we believe on that basis that cider should be included, given it is the fermentation of a fruit fruit-based product.
So if you got your wish, what would it mean for the way cider is labelled as a product? What would we see?
We would see complete transparency of the origin of the fruit that goes into cider. So, the bigger companies would have to disclose the fact that they use imported ingredients. At the moment, there's no disclosure requirements around that. And we'd like to see greater transparency so consumers can make, informed choices and actually, have a better idea about what they're eating and drinking.
Would it also be fair to say that some of the I'm going to say non-standard flavours, you've got your standard old apple and pear ciders that have been around for yonks, but now you've got all these weird and wonderful flavours that if it's one of those, it probably is not Australian?
Yeah, typically a lot of the fruit-based products are of European descent. They would absolutely be included in that review process, along with any other straight apple or pear ciders that would also be sourcing their fruit from overseas.
All right. Well, Rich, I'll catch up with you again, I'm sure, as this process rolls through. Good luck. Thanks for having a chat this morning.
Fantastic. Thanks for the time.
Rich Coombes, who is from Batlow Cider this morning, concerned from the cider industry, the Australian apple cider industry, battling with the federal government to have alcohol included in the country of origin labelling laws, because at the moment it's not. So they're getting a bit of a hit from it.